Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gabriel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division. The story I'm about to tell you is based on many true facts. The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All the information presented is taken from public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved are used with the utmost respect. No part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. Some content may be disturbing to listeners. Discretion is strongly advised. Relax. Listen in while I tell you the story of Bed 4 is missing. Subtitled Straitjacket. At least that's who we called him. His name was Gabriel Droge Rutledge. His surname was quite appropriate, as I always thought he lived on the edge. His name had the word ledge in it. I first encountered Gabriel in the year 1962. I was a 13-year-old kid playing half-ball in the street with my friend Danny Loeffler. We were playing in the 1200 block of Jackson Street in Camden, which was one block over from where I lived on Sheridan Street. And it was actually the street Danny lived on. Danny was my age. Now Gabriel, when we first see him, he's sitting on the back of a downed tailgate on the back of Blackie's fruit and produce pickup truck, which had appeared on Lewis and Jackson Streets. Blackie was the local huckster who would cruise the hood on his prearranged route selling fruit and produce to the local residents. Gabriel saw us as the truck entered north on Lewis Street and started throwing tomatoes at us while perched on the tailgate. He's dangling his feet back and forth, had a huge smile on his face, and he's calling us piss ants. He was getting a big kick out of bombing us with tomatoes. He did appear to be a few years older than us, but there were two of us, one of him. We figured we could run up behind the truck and pull his ass off the tailgate, and then we'd take off running and get the last laugh at his dumb ass. We figured he was working so he wouldn't chase us by leaving the truck, not if he wanted to get paid for that day, at least. Plus, he might have been a little older, but we felt we were faster. As we caught up to the back of the truck and were trying to grab him, he started to swing at us while kicking his feet, the truck still moving. He was a tough monkey. We weren't able to pull him off the truck, but we walked away happy that at least we showed him that we were not afraid of him. Well, after a few days had passed, we had run into him again on Jackson Street. Turns out he was recently released from an orphanage to a live-in foster parents who lived on Jackson Street. He said because he was old enough to get working papers and he had to have a prearranged job in order to be fostered. He was now 16, pretty big kid for his age. We ended up befriending him And, well, we played, stickball with him, half ball, wiffle ball, etc. We played mostly in the neighborhood. It wasn't long after talking with him that we decided this boy's got a bolt loose. We came to that conclusion after hearing his stories of how he likes to set stray cats on fire by squirting them with lighter fluid and watching them run screaming to their deaths. Like, what the F, guy? In talking with him, he says, hey, let's go cat hunting. I love grabbing them by their tails and swinging them around and then throwing them into a brick wall. He tells us that, and he also tells us that he hates his foster parents and that they are not happy with him. He says they were trying to get a baby to foster originally, but there was a long list of people ahead of them waiting for a younger child. He said he was 12 when he first was awarded to them. He said they were asked by the agency to take him temporarily until he reached age 18, and that this would help them in the future with adopting a baby. They explained to these parents that he was a young man with some behavioral issues and was in need of a male role model. Well, so that was 4 years ago, he says. I'm stuck with them. He tells us the old man isn't as bad as the old lady. She thinks she's the boss of me, pulls my hair and shit. I hate that old bitch. I'm planning to run away. I just might F her up. Yeah, I think I'll F that bitch up before I run away. Well, we half didn't believe him. We thought he was like just a big kid trying to impress a couple of younger kids in the neighborhood that he just met, trying to impress us that he was some kind of badass or big shot or something. Well, we hung around him for a while when he wasn't working on the produce truck anyway. We noticed that he wasn't going to school. When we asked him why not, he says, I already got my high school diploma. I got out of high school 3 years early. They say I'm a genius. I have a high IQ and they want me to go to college. I hate school. I started getting into trouble by stealing cars on purpose so I wouldn't have to go to college. I just got back from juvie lockup. I was in a detention center in Lakeland. I stole a laundry truck a couple of years back, and I got caught for it last year. They sent me away for a year. I don't give a F. I'd rather be in jail than with them cocksuckers anyway. Well, like you guys say, OMG. When I heard laundry truck a couple years back, I almost soiled my pants right there. I'm thinking, could that have been Foster's Laundry Service? Thurman Street, Camden? Only a couple of blocks from where we lived? Holy shit. This brought back an immediate memory. I was 11 or barely 12 years old then. A friend of our family, Uncle Jimmy I called him, Jimmy Di Palma. God rest his soul, man. He is a saint. He was then and he is now. He worked for Foster's Laundry Service. That was one of the jobs I used to go with him as his helper. He used to take me along with him on his route and pay me. Usually in the summertime or on weekends when I didn't have any school. We'd go to several hotels, restaurants, I loved to go to one of the stops on his route, which was Fort Dix Military Boot Camp Installation of the United States. The United States Army, that is, in Pemberton Township, New Jersey. There, the soldiers assigned would be flopped atop large bundles of bed sheets and etc. inside of an empty warehouse just stacked to the ceiling with these bundled up bed sheets and such. We would gather and replace the old dirty ones with clean ones. Here we didn't have to count the linens we were picking up. The soldiers already took care of that. They'd have so many of the sheets and whatnot bundled into each bundle of soiled laundry, and they would know the count. It was a specific count. The same time, same date, same count every week. Then, after we loaded the truck with this dirty laundry, we would always have lunch at the mess hall with some of the recruits there. It was very cool for a 13-year-old city kid from Camden. Well, anyway, one day I'm on the truck early in the morning waiting for Uncle Jim to finish up in the office so that we can begin our route for the day. Well, suddenly, out of nowhere, like a phantom, this big kid appears in the already open large side front door of the truck. He immediately hops in the driver's seat, starts the truck, and takes off like a wild man. He's laughing his ass off, not paying any attention to me or the road. He's speeding and weaving all over the place. He's definitely driving it like he stole it. I'm in the meantime freaking the hell out. But I'm being careful not to piss this kid off. I was young, but I was no dummy living on the streets of Camden. But I know I am now in a stolen truck and on the ride of my life. Well, there would be another ride from hell when I turned 16, but that's another story in my book. The door is wide open. I'm looking at the street below thinking, will I die if I jump out? He's not holding me. I'm definitely thinking about it. He starts weaving back and forth. Not a good situation. He's flying up and down side streets. He's laughing his ass off, going everywhere and headed nowhere at the same time. I'm like, man, stop the effing truck, man. He just keeps on laughing. Now, I already had a guilt complex from my old man who was mistreating me and my siblings. So I am already thinking, I'm somehow going to be in trouble for this. They will say that I'm involved. I had something to do with it. So I was getting scared. Then I started thinking, what is this guy going to do with me? I'm a witness, don't you see? I need to get the Mother Fletcher out of here. Well, this ride went on for about an hour and a half when he finally stops at the Whitman Park section of Camden. This is a large parcel of land that hosted Little League Baseball, Major League Baseball, had a couple of different size football fields, basketball courts, playground concession stands, and the famous Woodland Hills, also known as the Humpback Hills, a series of man-made hills that us kids would ride our bikes on. We'd play army in the woods. We'd climb up a tree while the other guy chopped the tree down, and we'd ride the tree down to the ground, taking turns doing it. It was my stopping grounds. I was very familiar with this area. This was my spot. This was home to the Dingler brothers, Bobby and Johnny, my brother and I, my friend Stevie Stone D'Annunzio. We all just loved going to these woods. We played there from day till the streetlights came on. Quickly as this nitwit appeared, he jumped off the truck, waving his arms, saying, "See ya, sucker!" And he disappeared into the woods. When he said he had been jailed for stealing a laundry truck when he was younger, it suddenly all came back to me. Holy shit, this kid was the kid that jacked me that day. It was only then that I recognized him. On the day of the joyride, he was wearing what looked like brand new blue jeans, denims, rolled up cuffs at the bottom, a Jeff hat, and sunglasses. I really didn't connect the dots until this information was coming at me. Now he, of course, had no idea that I was the kid in the truck that day he jacked it. I wasn't about to tell him either. I didn't want him thinking that I had ratted him out or something. I had no idea that he had gotten caught for the heist either. When I told the police and Uncle Jim what happened, Uncle Jim vouched for me and I was believed, which was huge for me. A huge relief. Usually, I got my ass beat even if I was telling the truth and did nothing wrong. Uncle Jim told my old man, "Hut," he said, "it's not Harry's fault. You're lucky he didn't get hurt." Well, I spent the night at Uncle Jim's house that night as a safety net anyway. He knew my old man was brutal, and I was shaken up. Now let me tell you a little bit about Jimmy DePalma. Not to get off subject, but this is interesting to know. Before professional athletes became celebrities, South Jersey had its own hero. That was him, Jimmy DePalma. He was one of them. He was a hard-throwing right-handed softball pitcher who played all around South Jersey for neighborhood taverns and bars. He was on several of the teams. He played during the 1950s and 60s. He was like a local celebrity. When local ball fields were packed with factory workers, bartenders, longshoremen, and kids leaning on the fences under the lights. He was like a dad to me. He took me to many a game. He was actually inducted into the Softball Pitchers Hall of Fame. What a guy he was. Well, now this story being told to me by Gabriel clinched it. We knew now for sure that this new kid on the block, Gabriel, had balls, but he was, in fact, crazy. Danny and his family lived in the rental property in the 1200 block of Jackson Street, which was owned by other friends of my family. We called them Uncle George and Aunt Joan. They had 3 kids. Dickie, who was my age, I hung out with him. He was adopted by George, the father. Aunt Joan was his real mom. Then they had a daughter, Debbie, who was Aunt Joan's daughter. And the youngest son, the spoiled Georgie Porgy. He was Uncle George's biological son. And he was spoiled to death. They also owned a large pig farm way back in the end of a long, muddy dirt road in Medford, New Jersey. As kids, a couple of brothers and mine would sneak into the funeral hearse car that they drove when they visited us at our house. Myself and Dickie would also go with the old man to various restaurants, picking up slops in 55-gallon barrels and loading them on the back of his truck and taking them out to the farms where we would slop the pigs. That's a whole nother story. We loved to go to the farm, especially in the summer. But we weren't never allowed to go. That was the problem. My old man, everything out of his mouth was no. We were going, but my mom would tell the old man, hey, they snuck into the car. What do you want me to do? They're fine. Don't worry about it. They're going to go with Joan and George for a couple of days. They'll be all right. Well, they had 9 kids. What's a few less for a few days? He wouldn't miss them unless he needed to beat our asses for something. This would mean an ass beating for sure when we got back home. But somehow it was worth it. Now, Uncle George was the friend of my father who had loaned him the shotgun he had while he was hunting for my mother on the streets of Camden. He thought that she was out cheating on him. Well, that's another story, and that's in my book. The old man was a little crazy, too. Sometimes the house on Jackson Street would be vacant. Since the owners, the Pecunises, and my family were friends, one time, as a teenager, I had a girlfriend and I was looking for a place to make out with her. Well, I got into the house because I knew where they kept the spare key. While the girl and I went upstairs, I'm standing in the hallway and I hear voices coming from downstairs. Somebody's coming in. We quickly and quietly jump into a hallway closet. Moments later, we hear footsteps coming up the steps. There's another oh shit moment. What the hell is this? Suddenly, the closet door is pulled open. It's Aunt Joan and her daughter Debbie. They're now at first shocked to see us, but immediately bust out laughing at us. It was all cool. Aunt Joan was the best. Now, I mentioned this short story of a memory because it happened right around the same time that I lost all contact with Gabriel. Now, Danny was a very short kid as a teenager. He only stood about 4'5" or 6 inches tall. He was a tough, ornery little bugger, and he was a very nice kid. He worked hard. He was a hustler. He had a paper route and always helped out his family. They had about 12 or 13 kids, a little bit more than we had. One summer day while we're out at the dump near the Humpback Hills, Danny finds a 5-gallon can sitting on top of a pile of trash. We were out there shooting rats with 2 German Luger-style BB guns that I had snuck out of the house with that my old man kept stashed up in the rafters in our basement. Well, Danny lights a match and drops it into this 2.5-inch round hole that's in top of the can. As he's bent over looking into the hole to see what's going to happen, a huge flame shoots out of the top of the can with this loud poof sound. I can still see it. Danny looks at me with a look of astonishment on his face. His eyelashes and eyebrows are completely singed to a brown curly stubble. Without a word, he takes off running, headed for home with me alongside of him. As we reach his house, his old man opens the front door. Danny bends down like an NFL lineman and shoots between the old man's legs and darts up the stairs. I'm sure there's a butt kicking to follow this caper, but this is right around the time that I lose contact with Gabriel. It seems he just wasn't around anymore. It was strange. No one mentioned where he was or what might have happened to him. I imagined that it wasn't for any good reason, so I didn't ask. He was just missing in action. MIA. Gone like a fart in the wind. I figured he either ran away or got sent off to another reformatory or something worse, perhaps jail. We didn't know. I was sort of glad that he wasn't around anyway. I didn't like the thought of getting in trouble, and any time he was around, you can count on it, there'd be some trouble. My old man beat me enough without me getting into trouble. I had found out later on that poor Danny had committed suicide. He had shot himself twice over a teenage girlfriend that he was in love with. The first time, he survived after shooting himself in the stomach. Sometime after that, there was a second time. He shot himself in the stomach again. Only this time, he didn't survive. Poor kid. So sad. What a good buddy. Years had passed, and in 1972, I started my police career. I spent my first year on the job as a special officer and traffic officer, then another 12 years as a Runnymede police officer. In 1984, I joined the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, and in 1989, I was transferred into the Elite Homicide Division, where I spent the next 11 years of my police career. After retirement, I did a year as a Director and Chief of Security at the Camden City Housing Authority, and then I did 20 years as a private investigator, specializing in unsolved homicide cases. During my tenure in homicide, on the job, I was first out for the next homicide call to come in from any one of the 36 municipalities. We're all part of a 3 legislative district. One Sunday I was at home relaxing. My 1 week on call would be over at 12:01 a.m. Monday morning. But it wasn't to be. Sometime that Sunday, early afternoon, the beeper goes off. It's Central Communications, and I call them back. I'm told there had been a homicide at a suburban mental health facility in Camden County. A man was found in a facility men's room there on the floor, deceased. The cause of death would later be determined to be manual strangulation. I get there, and as I enter the main entrance, I'm standing where 4 hallways come together and meet. I haven't as of yet met anyone affiliated with the facility when a man comes up running to me, sliding to a stop in front of me. After stopping abruptly and while bending at the waist with this crazed look on his face, he says to me, "My name is Gabriel, and I'm crazy." Then, as quickly as he appeared, he takes off running up one of the hallways. Well, I immediately recognize him. It's Gabriel from the old hood. I shake my head in astonishment and commence my investigation at hand. I wholeheartedly believe that he had no idea who I was, nor did he recognize me. It's been way too long since he last saw me. I do my preliminary investigation on scene. There is much to do, and after my initial assessment of the scene and the body at the Camden County Crime Lab arrives on the scene. The Camden County Coroner is also en route. The Crime Lab techs conduct the usual crime scene duties. They do a sketch, photos, videos, both of the body site and the room and sleeping quarters of the victim. The victim is positively identified as Paul Rexton, white male, age 28. He's identified by staff on site through recorded documentation. His next of kin is then notified. The coroner takes charge of the decedent and arranges transport of the body to the Camden County Medical Examiner's Office for a mandatory forensic autopsy, which I would later attend. During my intervention, I gather a couple of lists of all the current patients along with a roster of a guest list covering the past 2 weeks and any outside vendors that may have had access to the facility during that time frame. Any and all, if any, state records of complaints or abuses must also be obtained, which would need to be subpoenaed and examined by me at a later date, if necessary. A lot to do, as you can probably imagine. After getting a list of all patients, I scheduled each patient for separate interviews. I learned in short order that there was a no smoking policy in place at the facility. This was not being strictly adhered to by the patients. I saw plenty of evidence in the rooms of the patients that smoking was taking place in the rooms. This information would become useful later in this investigation. Now, albeit that they would try to hide the fact that they were smoking in the rooms, it was a sloppy attempt to hide it, but it was obvious to me that smoking was definitely taking place in the rooms. Smoking was only permitted outside in the courtyard and not inside the facility, which included the restrooms, where it appeared was the most frequent place that patients smoked in private. The first day of this investigation was long and tedious. I wasn't expecting what would happen next. When Monday morning rolled around, I hadn't been home long, but I was glad that this job came in when it did, because now it's about 3:30 in the morning and there's a heavy thunderstorm with cracking thunder and lightning going on outside. I thought I was done for the night, but it turns out I wasn't. You heard about the frog that thought, right? Well, if you haven't, here it is. The frog thought he farted, but he didn't. He actually crapped himself. My pager lights up again. It's central again. I call them again. This time the dispatcher tells me to call the mental health facility. I call it. Of course I had the number. It is then that I am informed that the entire facility just went on complete lockdown. Reason? Bed 4 is missing. You got it. Bed 4 is Gabriel Drudge Rutledge's bed. He is nowhere to be found on the property. Now, me having a good previous knowledge of Gabriel, I decided to go back on the clock and head to the infirmary. I knew I didn't have to. I knew it was nasty outside, but I did it without hesitation, even though I thought I had just gotten home fairly recently after working all day. I wasn't really tired because I had gotten my second wind, and my mind wanted me to place Gabriel as suspect number 1 after hearing what I just learned. However, my experience as a seasoned homicide detective told me to keep an open mind. You follow the evidence where the evidence takes you. Tunnel vision is a homicide investigator's worst enemy. Now, I also knew if Gabriel decided to fly the coop, that could very well be unrelated to my homicide, just given the fact that he suffers from mental health issues. But I would maintain the possibility that he could in fact be my suspect. I didn't want to lose sight of that, but I didn't want to focus as that being my main approach. Approximately 35 minutes later, I arrived at the facility. Several of the staff, the administrative director, they're all on scene, huddled around a coffee pot in the kitchen. I approach them, introduce myself again, and I get briefed, and I immediately request an in-depth record of the missing patient's background with information containing any behavioral known issues, complaints, or infractions as a patient. I had already requested the same previously of all the patients. However, now since I had most of the staff gathered here, it was an opportunity to hear directly from them as to what they knew concerning Gabriel's past behavior. Gabriel was described as an intelligent individual with a flaw. They all generally agreed that they could not trust him to stay on task. He often would be given a task such as a broom the floor job. Gabriel, broom your room. He would broom it, but refused to use the dustpan to pick up the dirt. He said, "You said broom the floor, not pick it up too." Then he'd laugh. Well, he knew better, but that was just his way. He was, however, keen to know that if his room had 3 persons in it, he needed no schedule to know when his day was. That was all on record in his head. The staff knew of his long record of abusing small animals. His chart indicated that in code. And besides, there were no animals permitted on the property as a general rule, so no problems to note there. There was some sort of bartering with cigarettes going on that I found with the patients during their card games, board games, and other various instances. Gabriel was known to threaten people verbally that if you tried to cheat him, he would get even with you. He had been in a few minor fights over card games or someone stealing from him. Nothing major, no reports of seriously hurting anyone. That would have been a big, huge red flag. That's important to keep in mind. Now, I was looking for it. He was said to be big on honesty. He was actually known for being honest. If he did something wrong and was asked about it, they say he would fess right up. Now, there had been no sign of him over the last 24 hours. No sightings, no information about where he might be had come in. There was nothing. It was learned through risk management that Gabriel had been upset with several people from his past. The police who caused him to be evaluated at a Cherry Hill mental health facility before he was sent to an infirmary had pissed him off that they had done that to him. The doctor who committed him was a person on his list. His foster mother, with whom he had a long lost contact with her. He had vowed to get even with people whom he perceived to have hurt him in the past. However, as far as the authorities knew, he had not actually hurt anyone as of yet. But was he a ticking time bomb? Or just a threat to those in authority over him? After a couple of days had passed, Washington Township Police get a call from a woman with a very concerning complaint. She states that her name was Blanche Corbett. She asked to have an officer meet her at her home. She refused to give the dispatcher any further details. The officer arrived at her home, and she very reluctantly reported to him and made it very clear to him that she did not wish to and was not going to and had any interest in signing any type of complaint against the person that she was going to tell the officer about. She prefaced her conversation with that warning sign. She goes on to state that she had encountered a strange man who had stopped her while she was entering a food store. He told her his name was Gabriel and that he would not hurt her and for her not to be scared of him. But she needed to do what he was asking of her. She felt like she might do something to appease this guy because she feared that he might do something to her if she did not comply. He didn't produce a weapon, but she was pretty frightened of him just the same. After all, this was a complete stranger. She was told to drive him to Winslow Township, and he had asked her if she knew where Ancora State Hospital was. That statement alone struck fear in her heart. She told him she wasn't sure, but he said that he knew the way. He told her he wanted to turn himself into Ancora. And the reason was because, now this is important, a friend of his, quote unquote, died at the shelter where he was staying. Now, I learned early on, each word spoken could be of great importance to the investigation. This was one of those words. He left the facility because he was sure that they would blame him for it. Now, she immediately recalled seeing a story on the news matching what he was telling her, at which time she feared that she may be in the car with a killer because the news was saying that there had been a homicide at this facility that she believed was the facility he was claiming that he left. Gabriel had not seen the news and had not heard that there had been a homicide. He just thought that his friend died there and that he would be blamed. During the ride, he told her that he did not hurt his friend and that he was in fact crazy, but he was not a liar. He reiterated, "They won't believe me because I'm crazy Gabriel." Well, the second I hear this information, I knew it was in fact Gabriel. I had completely forgotten something that he had told me and Danny years earlier. I could almost quote him. One day we were hanging out on Jackson Street playing stickball, and he says that he had spent some time at Ancora. They used to beat the kids there. To pass the time, the kids used to race cockroaches. And one kid bet him that he wouldn't eat one. He did. While saying this to us, he's looking at us with this faraway stare on his face while he says, "You guys don't believe me, do you?" We don't say a word. He says, "I'm crazy, but I'm not a liar." The boy could chill a pitcher of water. Miss Corbett wasn't hurt. She had waited more than a full day to report this incident. She stated that she worried that if she reported it, and he found out that she reported it, that he might go after her or her family. Her explanation to the police was that if he was going to turn himself in like he said he was going to do, then that would have been the end of it. She said, "He said he was going to do it, and I believed him." She said that the more he talked to her, and she to him, the more she began to feel sorry for him, but still concerned, and she didn't want to get hurt, and she didn't want to really get involved. Once home, of course, she saw the story was all over the news. She was now looking for the story, and the fact that Gabriel was still missing was not good. She's hearing murder at an insane asylum, escaped patient. She's quite unsettled. After learning this information, police authorities set up camp at the Ancora property, inside and outside, but there's no sign of Gabriel. Given the entire situation, this was a big deal. A lot of concern by the police for public safety. The hunt was on, big time. Before the next 24 hours passed, he was found, safe and sound. A patrol officer on routine patrol had spotted a disheveled-looking man, looking homeless, walking along a tree-lined road in Hamilton, New Jersey, not far from Ancora. This homeless man had a blanket draped over his shoulders, which hung down, meeting the pavement. The officer stopped the man and inquired if he needed help, and asked him his name. The man said he was Gabriel. Well, the officer knew that name. The officer quickly exited the vehicle and took him into custody. He brought him into police headquarters, where he was then detained. Camden County Prosecutor's Office was notified, and I was dispatched to go pick him up and bring him to the Camden County Prosecutor's Office headquarters. During the ride to the prosecutor's office, we engaged in some small talk, and I had reminded him that I was Harry from the old neighborhood, and we used to hang out together. I felt that would assist me in future dealings with him. He appeared to remember who I was, and quite receptive to it. Once at the CCPO, I advised him of his rights. He waived his rights to an attorney, and I began my interview. It should be noted by this time that Gabriel was very worn out. He was tired, hungry, and weary. We took a mental health approach with him. We fed him. We didn't use any type of stress tactics on him. When it came to question him about the homicide victim and his escape from the facility, he came across forthcoming and genuine. As genuine as I remember him anyway. During one point he did say, Paul, that was the name of our victim, never did anything wrong to me. I got along good with him. I didn't do anything to him, and I was with him a lot because we got along. We got along good. I know they will blame me for what happened to him. I looked into the bathroom after Nate told me that he was in there dead on the floor. I didn't believe him until I opened the bathroom door. When I went in and saw him, as soon as I saw him, he did look dead to me. I've never saw a dead guy before, but he looked dead. I didn't know if anything had happened to him. I just thought that he died. But I still thought they would blame me, thinking I did something to him. I'm crazy, but I'm not a liar, and I didn't do anything to Paul. Now, according to Paul's medical records, it was a fact that he suffered from paranoia and sometimes schizophrenia. We as homicide never take "I didn't do it" at face value. A very comprehensive investigation of the homicide type was in full swing. Gabriel did tell us who exactly he wanted to hurt, not kill, just hurt. And he went down his list. His foster mother was at the top. He said he had hated her, and she had hurt him many times. One doctor was on the list from a psychiatric facility who committed him to the psychiatric facility which he was in. The two officers that once had him committed by taking him to a mental health facility to be evaluated by a doctor, and one orderly who worked at Ancora State Hospital. And one more person, Miss Blanche Corbett. She was definitely on his list. Now, she didn't tell us this information that I'm about to tell you, or perhaps she failed to remember to tell us. But I was about to learn why she was on his list. During the arduous interview with Gabriel, we learned that when he was dropped off at Ancora by Miss Corbett, he had stayed in the surrounding woods at the hospital. He had become familiar with that area during his previous stay there. There was no less than 650 acres and acres of woods and property of which and where he could hide. We believed he was planning to exact his revenge on the orderly who worked there, that Matthew, he had mentioned, that had hurt him in the past and was on his list to get even with. He had stated that the orderly was abusive to some of the kids there by beating them and food deprivation on occasion. Gabriel said he definitely wanted to hurt that guy. Now, of course, any potential named victim or victims would be notified about Gabriel's threats. However, only warnings were issued. No charges were attached as the threats had not been carried out that we knew of. Prosecutors would consider the information regarding the threats and react accordingly. They had plenty of time to add charges if necessary. After numerous interviews of the current patients of the facility where a murder occurred, a suspect eventually emerged. After zeroing in on a firm suspect, we needed more time to complete additional interviews of a number of now potential fact witnesses on our list. In typical homicide investigation fashion, we needed to gather as much inculpatory, evidential, factual information as possible before closing in on the suspect. We try, whenever possible, to save the target suspect as last to be contacted and interviewed. The reason being, if you save them for last, you have a lot more information to go at them with and knowledge and facts of the case. If you build and have a strong case on or against the suspect, when you close in on them and they refuse to speak to you and lawyer up, it is always good that you've done your homework and you are in a position to say, you're under arrest for murder 1. Tell your lawyer to give me a call. The investigation revealed that Paul Rexton, our victim, had been strangled to death by Raymond Payton for not paying him for protection. Raymond was a good-sized musclehead type guy who had a rep in the facility as a bully. He had several of the patients there paying him protection money in either cigarettes or cash. He was a nasty son of a bitch. Paul was being treated and threatened as if he didn't pay up. Raymond was about to open up a can of whoop-ass on him. Paul was already in arrears with Raymond. According to witnesses, Raymond lures Paul into the restroom. We discovered that he had another patient there, who was now a witness, watch the door for him while Raymond went in to rough him up. Instead, Paul tries to fight back, or he's trying to defend himself, one of the two, at which time he is strangled to death. Raymond left him on the floor and told the doorman on the way out, "You don't know shit. You don't know nothing. Got it?" as he raises a gesture of a fist. Witnesses later discovered that Paul's lifeless body is lying dead on the floor. Staff was not notified until after Gabriel had heard the news, and after Gabriel had seen Paul on the floor, and then quickly vacated the premises before the actual facility lockdown. These things had a way of not reaching staff awareness until long after the fact. At the completion of the witness information statements and the evidential factors presented in the case, Raymond Payton, age 39, white male, was arrested in the wee hours of the night. We rousted him up from his sleep in order to catch him at his most unsuspecting time, as to reduce greatly the possibility of any kind of resistance issues. And at the same time, the residents of the facility would not be a security concern. They'd be in bed sleeping. We knew how to operate. We were very flexible. Peyton, during his interrogation, after some initial wrangling on his part, trying to see what we knew, gave it up fully. He laid it out, step by step. He talked about Muscle and Paul, having him on the hook for payments for protection, the whole deal. He was booked, charged, and delivered to the Camden County Jail Infirmary, where he was issued his new set of toiletries and a nice, fresh, bright red jumpsuit with the letters CCJ in black letters across his back. His final destination would likely be Trenton State Prison in the ward for the criminally insane. Now, it was known in police circles as the Baroom Building, the Psychiatric Hospital of Trenton State Prison, the place where nightmares are born. Some say it's just like Shutter Island. I once asked the guard there if the place was haunted. He said, "You have no idea." It was opened in 1848 by Dr. Henry Cotton. That was 100 years before I was even born. He conducted experimental barbaric surgeries there on over 600 inmates. Some of those techniques continued into the 1960s. It's like walking into a scene from The Silence of the Lambs once you get beyond the lobby, into the area of the quote-unquote old buildings, its darkest corners, home to the weird and paranormal. If you ask if this is where they keep Hannibal Lecter, the reply would be, we keep several of them here. Lost souls, forgotten, buried alive. As to Gabriel, he was banned from returning to the facility from which he escaped. Luckily, without administrative charges. He could not be recommitted to Ancora due to his open pending threat directed at one of the orderlies there. As an alternative, Gabriel was remanded to a more secure mental health facility. It was an infirmary, and it was in Bridgeton, New Jersey. After spending a year there, he was transitioned to a halfway house. It was a home for adult men, complete with an in-house medical doctor, nurses, and security. He still had mental challenges, and this was a good alternative for him. He remains there to this day, as to my knowledge anyway. Now, I recall going over very carefully with Gabriel the names of those on his list who he wished to harm. There was no actual list on paper, They were all in his head. After this ordeal, he had recently added 2 new people to his list. One was whoever the person that killed his friend Paul, I'll get even with him. The other was none other than Miss Corbett, the lady that gave him the ride to Ancora State Hospital. I asked him, "Why is she on your list?" I mentioned that to you earlier, that she was in fact on his list. I held it back intentionally. Here was his answer. He said, "I want to try to save up some money and see if I can get a bouquet of flowers for her. I know they won't give me her address, but maybe there is a way where I could find somebody who would deliver them for me." She believed me. She was nice. She was kind to me. She gave me a blanket when she dropped me off. The end. This is Detective Sergeant Harry Gabriel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Detective. See you next time. Join me for another case from the murder capital of the nation.